Okay, so I feel like I need to eat my words. So if those of you who haven't seen it, a while back I did a reaction to the first trailer of Halloween 2018, and although I said I was going to go see it, some things were disappointing and, just seemed a bit off. Okay, so literally just through the door from watching it, probably the best sequel in the entire series. Wow. Okay, so it's going to be completely spoiler free. So the basic setup, obviously it's been 40 years since the original. All the other entries have been completely ignored, to the point Laurie isn't even his sister, which I thought was going to ruin it, because I didn't understand why Michael would be so obsessed with this one person 40 years on if she wasn't his sister. And without spoilers, they do a good way of actually explaining that without explaining it. Because basically Michael isn't fixated on Laurie. Michael escapes and he kills randomly, as a serial killer does. He just kills randomly, and it just so happens to lead him to Laurie, who now has a daughter and a granddaughter. And that's basically how that happens. In Laurie's mind, it's her v. Michael, and Michael is set out to face her. And maybe I interpreted it wrong or differently. I didn't really get that. I think it was just her psyche saying that Michael was, obsessed with her, whereas actually the other way around. So I liked that. It takes the element of H2O and expands on it. I think it was clearly inspired by Terminator 2, with a lot of the stuff that they did with Laurie preparing for Doomsday, the boogeyman. And I will say this movie is actually really scary. They go back to the suspense and the tension of the original. There's a lot of tension in this. There's a lot of great throwbacks to the original. And there's even a throwback to Halloween 3, if you can believe that. So there's some really clever throwbacks. There is some gruesome moments. There's not like too much gore. It's not like the sequels, but there are some, gruesome moments. The death count is pretty high. The acting is all around great. What I like about this film is the first part focuses on Laurie, and it builds her arc of this, because this was another thing I thought, would you be that traumatized 40 years on? I mean, you'd remember, you never forget it and everything, but like she has a security gate and a bunker in the basement and this whole array of guns and everything, and I'm like, would you be that paranoid 40 years on if the other films didn't happen? But they kind of say, after the incident, she became an alcoholic, and then she had failed relationships, and it just kind of, I guess, depression and paranoia over the years kind of damaged her mental state further, which does, in my opinion, explain it very well. And the first part of the film focuses on Laurie's character, and I feel like you go on the journey with her. So I liked Laurie in the original, but she didn't really have much substance in the original. It was just Jamie Lee Curtis carrying the performance. This was really written well, that you go on this journey with her, you feel for her, her family, although her daughter has some not really, I guess, bitchy moments where you're like, wow, you're being a bit of a bitch. You can kind of understand where she's coming from. Her granddaughter is really likable. Obviously you get the side characters that inevitably die. They're really likable. I didn't want to see these people get killed. And it kind of culminates, because the first half is focusing on Laurie's character. Then it's about Michael. And there are some great scares. The bathroom scene that's in the trailer, you don't even, there's I wish I could spoil it, but I don't want to. But there's tiny details in that scene that once you see it in its entirety is scary as fuck. There's great comedy as well. It's not overkill, but there are a few great comedic moments. I was wondering if they were actually going to put Loomis in this and recast. They didn't. They acknowledge his existence, but he's not in it. So honestly, like I said, I think it's the best sequel, because films that take a time away and then come back years later, like Jigsaw or Curse of Chucky, they kind of take time away and they come back with a fresh new view on the series, but then it's the same film. This goes back to the suspense of the original, but it adds to it, and it takes the format of H2O, but expands on it and elaborates on it. And I think does it in a way that no other film in the franchise has done. And Michael is now targeting, or not targeting, but in obviously he finds Laurie, and it's him against 3 generations of her family, which is so cool, honestly. The mask, I take it back. In the trailer, because it was only briefly shown, I thought it looked shitty. In this, it actually looks really good. The direction is actually amazing. They're like I think a lost art in horror films is just, I don't know if Carpenter had any say in the direction, but what I love about the original is that he used the background rather than the foreground to build suspense. Like Loomis is kind of looking around, and then in the background you see Michael driving a car behind him. This movie does that, and you don't see that in films anymore. That's awesome, Negatives. Okay. So right at the start, which is one of the scenes in the trailer where they try to talk to Michael in the asylum, and he pulls out the mask. Because it's early on, I don't see it as a big spoiler, but basically he pulls out the mask, and Michael kind of doesn't look, but he is about to look, kind of. And the guy's like, "You can feel it, can't you, Michael?" And it's this big moment. It's a mask. There's no... Like, for a film that's trying to ignore all the supernatural stuff, you're saying that he can feel the power of this mask. And the only other one is the ending. Without giving it away, they have the huge climax, which is awesome, by the way. You will be on the edge of your fucking seat for this. No music, or very little music. The suspense is incredible. Genuinely was terrified in the fucking cinema. But when the climax, it's one of them films. Climax, end. I mean, in a way, I don't know what they could have done after that, but it just seemed really abrupt. But that's it. That's my only 2 issues. So although I was disappointed that it erased, some of the sequels that I liked, it wouldn't have worked. It would not have worked if they kept all of them. So I understand why they did it, and I'm happy that they did it. Will this be the end? I can't say. I can't say, because I saw on Twitter apparently a sequel's already in the works. I don't know, based on how this ends. It could go either way. Go and see this film. Genuinely the best film, the best sequel, hands down, in my opinion. Go see it. I'm just going to stop rambling so I can upload this as soon as possible because I'm still buzzing. Go see Halloween. The title bothers me. That's another flaw. The title is so dumb. Oh, and also one other negative. There's all these cops looming around, right? And then there's this other guy in just a suit, but he's wearing a cowboy hat. And it bothers me every time I see it. Why are you wearing a cowboy hat? That drives me insane. But other than that, it's great. It's also... I know I said I'll stop rambling, but I keep remembering other stuff. There's a couple of there's some characters that I thought were actually going to be the main protagonists other than Laurie and her family. No. Die. It keeps you guessing. There's a twist with another character that I did not see coming. And they hint, they try to dive into the psyche of a serial killer like Michael Myers without trying to find a reason the original franchise did, the original films did. So they kind of linger around what makes Michael tick, but not too much, because he has a new doctor and he's trying to figure it out and everything, taking over from Loomis, and it's good stuff. It's not basing on he's an unkillable evil entity. It's what makes him tick. 40 years later, he still hasn't spoken. I was actually worried that they were going to make him talk. Honestly. Such a good movie. Go and watch it, please.